Unfiltered Band means another episode of Unfiltered coming your way here and now. Here we go indeed. Officially, it's to go down as episode number 114 of Unfiltered. It's an October Unfiltered, and it is live as we sit here every day throughout the World Series to the conclusion of the 2022 season. Right here, three ways, live with you. My Twitter at Casey Stern, Believes YouTube, or you can get to my YouTube channel, which you can find and subscribe to by getting it and hitting up my Twitter bio. As always, thank you, Unfiltered Band. You could jump on board the Unfiltered Revolution at any time at Casey Stern. Get to the Believe shop. Get your Unfiltered Revolution merch. Whatever else you got to do to get involved, because we are rolling here in a World Series, and we've got a lot to cover here today after a game one that was straight bananas. Been covering baseball 20 years, covered 16 World Series, and a lot of crazy games. And, man, last night I'm sitting there and I'm like, there are some times where you just like you get that FOMO. Man, wish I was there in that building last night. That was crazy. And everything you could ever ask for after all of the waiting, as the late Tom Petty said, waiting the hardest part, the 5 days of all the preview. We got everything that you ever could have wanted from a baseball game yesterday, and we saw everything that we expected leading into this series based on what we've seen from the Philadelphia Phillies, and then plenty of unexpected as well. Break all that down here on this show. As always, great guests coming at you. My buddy Steve Phillips going to join me about 15 minutes. Longtime general manager, does a terrific job on MLB Network Radio and MLB Network and among other places. He'll join us and break down from where he sat. Always tough to be in those seats because, like us, you can't control it, but those guys sitting there hoping every decision is made right after all the analytics, after all the preparation, the paralysis by analysis, we get to analyze here and sit on what was happening yesterday and how it was managed, and we get help with that too. Guy knows a thing or two about that. Without Madison Bumgarner, he would have won not one but two World Series. Ned Yost be here in just about half an hour. As always, we are helped by being here by our good friends at Bet Online, and this is where I remind you that basketball is back. Bet Online remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. Latest odds, team matchup info, player news, game trends over at Bet Online, your continued source for all your sports wagering information. They've got live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet your favorite sports and events: NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, even golf. Just get over to betonline.ag. That's betonline.ag to join and get your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure, though, to use this promo code, BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. It's BetOnline, where the game starts and we get started. And I remind you, you can chat with us three ways as well. Real simple. If you're watching on YouTube, either on my channel or on Believe's, pop it open, jump into the chat. I'll get with you, converse along the way. Also, you can do the same here on Twitter. Just pop open the box if you're on Twitter watching live and get in, whether it's with replies or in the chat, and we'll get your thoughts and comments here during the course of the show, because I got plenty to say. And I'll tell you what, if you're paying attention to this show, you know that the last couple of days, and I even made a mention yesterday, I made a point in the middle of the show that I said I would say it at least, because sometimes it takes 3 times to remember something, whether it's Beetlejuice, Candyman, or anything sports related, always the same. And I mentioned 3 times in yesterday's show, talked about it the day before. Ever since Aaron Nola was announced as the Game 1 starter, what did I say? I said, you will see Rob Thompson manage a Game 1 at a World Series more aggressive than you've ever seen a guy manage a game if what? He's in the middle innings and he's got a chance to win it. Nobody should have been surprised by that. Nobody on the broadcast, nobody watching it. Not just because you listen to this show, because it makes sense. Because you watch the way Rob Thompson managed in the last series, and you see Game 3, for example, which stands out, and you notice that this guy's going to go for the jugular. I've said this many times. You always want to have more urgency rather than waiting too long, and he's proof of that. That proof been in the pudding and in the W's. But when you've got Wheeler going in Game 2, people, he knows, especially a guy now with extra day rest, who threw only 86 pitches, could have clearly gone deeper last week when he threw him, has been brilliant, that he's got a good chance, even though it's not a guarantee. Certainly nothing is. Just ask the Astros up 5-0 yesterday, which we'll get to. But you got a good chance to get Wheeler through 7 innings and go deep into this game tonight. And when you know that, backed up by an off day, you've got a chance to then throw everything. Throw the kitchen sink. Get a chance to win. The point when you're in a 7-game series, especially against a team like the Astros, where you're not sweeping them, at least most likely, They hadn't lost a game until yesterday in this postseason. You got to do the whole steal one and get out of Dodge and go back to Philadelphia, where you've been brilliant and unbeatable in that raucous, crazy crowd at Citizens Bank Park. You got to get back there with a win. You got to get one W. Well, guess what? You get a chance to get that win, you go for it. And we saw that from Rob Thompson yesterday. And I don't think anybody should be surprised by seeing him be in a position where when he's got Aaron Nola in the middle innings and you come back and you tie that score, what did he say in the interview that they did in the dugout? When he got a chance and he sees that momentum is on his side, he's going to work with that. He's going to bring Alvarado into the game. Another thing we brought up a couple of times here in the last couple of days, which you've heard me ask a number of people about, is a matchup I knew we'd see eventually, and you got it in the biggest spot yesterday with a strikeout, and that's David Robertson sitting there with those reverse splits and that cutter and that curveball working against Yordan Alvarez. So we'll have some more knowledge to drop for you here in the next hour or so. So don't go anywhere. Stay locked in and chat with us along the way, live and interactive. Of course, welcome to those listening on Apple, Spotify, everywhere else you get your podcast. Want to break a few things down before Steve Phillips gets in here in about 10 minutes. Number one, if Justin Verlander's going to the Hall of Fame, Justin Verlander is one of the greatest pitchers of our lifetime. I'm in my 40s. I don't care how old you are. That's just the way it is. What Justin Verlander's done this year and what will be a Cy Young season for him at this age, after that injury where he could have literally exit stage left, forget about can you come back? Why would you at this age when you got everything you did in your career? You put together a Hall of Fame resume. You got Cy Youngs. You got World Series. You got Kate Upton. No reason to do anything except just go away. But he wanted to come back, and he's had a remarkable season. What happened last night doesn't take that away, but here's what it does take away from. I don't care if you're a quarterback in the NFL and you got a great regular season ride and you got a great campaign in terms of putting together a career. If you can't get it done and you fail in the playoffs or you fail in a Super Bowl, and it's not because, hey, you threw 5 touchdowns, your defense gave up 6, but because you failed, you are looked at differently the rest of your life. If you're an NHL goaltender, nobody cares what you did in the regular season. Marty Brodeur, Patrick Waugh, all the guys you could think about in the last 3-4 decades, nobody cares who the hell they are. They don't get it done when it matters most and put a team on their back. Nobody cares about how many games the Golden State Warriors won the year they blew the 3-1 lead. People don't talk about just the amount of finals LeBron's in, but it's the championships he won. When you get to that stage, you got to get it done. And you add him to the list of Max Scherzer this year, certainly among others who we have seen fail, the Clayton Kershaws in spots that everybody gets on Clayton Kershaw for years. Let me tell you something, Justin Verlander has been way worse in the postseason than Clayton Kershaw ever was, because in Kershaw's spots, almost all of them, it was Don Mattingly 90% of the time, and then Dave Roberts, not having any bridge between him and Kenley Jansen, seeing the game too long. He giving you 5-6 brilliant innings, and then he should be out. Or it's a situation where he comes out of the bullpen in 2019 and with an inherited runner on, gets Adam Eaton as a pen guy, and you leave him in for some ungodly reason which made no sense, and Rendon and Soto both hit him for home runs, and then also it's Clayton Kershaw's fault. This is not that way. This is Justin Verlander has had a ton of starts where he hasn't gotten it done. This is Justin Verlander has had a ton of opportunities where he has not gotten it done. And yesterday, when you got a 5-0 lead, and JB going to be the first one to tell you this, when you got a 5-0 lead and you are a pitcher of his ilk, that is like having a 4-touchdown lead with the 85 Bears defense. That's the way it should be looked at. You can't give up that lead. But he had help. I love Dusty Baker. Love him. And, it is easier sitting from the couch or an office, sitting in a press box, sitting in the media seating out in the outfield, but all those places in the World Series, and it's easier. It's way easier than it is if you're there in that spotlight getting it done. But Dusty Baker cannot allow, especially when you watch the way Abreu pitched and how dominant that bullpen has been. We're talking about a bullpen with, as good a pedigree coming in during the season, been even better in the postseason, sub-1 ERA as a staff. As deep a bullpen, we've talked about it, as you can have. You got to get that bullpen and those horses the lead. Now, you could give up the 5-run lead, and it could be 5-3, but to come back at the next inning and not have anybody ready, not have anybody warning, to leave a situation where you've got Verlander who's given this thing up, and then ended up having to face Harper, you cannot have that happen, and Dusty had way too much trust, which, by the way, has worked tenfold for him most of his managerial career and this year. But getting there with your guys and going with the guys who got you there and trusting your guys and all of that, that's got to go out the window. And it goes back to what I talked about when AC was here yesterday, Alex Cora, and that's feel. And that's feel in that moment. That's Devers, 2018. Well, he don't play against lefties, but I'm going to do that. See, Pierce, right? He don't hit righties, but hey, looks like he's doing it now. I'm going to put him in there. I don't care what you're supposed to do. I don't care what Verlander's back of the baseball card is, which, by the way, in the World Series, not good. The 5.7 ERA, by the way, going into yesterday, now upped, okay? But you cannot blow that lead. And I love Dusty. You can't. I don't care if it gets to 5-4. You got to make sure, your point is you're sitting there watching that, is I am handing this bullpen that does not give up runs, I'm going to give them a lead of some sort. I'm going to give Verlander extra rope because he's had a Cy Young year and he's brilliant. I'm going to give Verlander an extra rope because he got off to a great start in this game, which he did. First 3 innings or so was brilliant. But I'm not going to sit there in a spot where I am losing that lead. I'm handing that dude Abreu, who, by the way, how filthy is that? That dude going to close somewhere someday. I mean, ridiculous stuff. He's crazy good. But to sit there and when you've got that kind of a bullpen in those names, that cannot happen. Can't happen. It was a mistake. Too much respect for Verlander in that spot. Pedigree and name, that stuff doesn't matter when you get there. Verlander was losing it. Doesn't matter why. Doesn't matter how many pitches. Can't happen. Now, for the Phillies on their side, I said this before the series. My gut was telling me Phillies in 6, and then my head picked Astros in 6. Maybe it went the wrong way. Should have gone with the dad bod in the gut. Because the way the Phillies have played, I tweeted this out yesterday, it's like a Rocky movie, people, and I know it's Philadelphia, so it's fitting. Literally every time they play, they get punched in the mouth, they get laughed at, they are done, they're not good enough, there's a big discrepancy, and all of a sudden they get up and they hit you over and over and over again. They don't care about matchups, they don't care about tomorrow, they don't care about what's supposed to be, they only care about how it is, and how it is that team's got belief. And when you believe, BLEAV, of course, it can happen. But who would have believed some of what we saw last night late in that game? And this is how you get, these are the kind of moments that give you the amazing, the great games, the games that you always remember. That Castellanos catch, by the way, his base hit earlier in the game, which was, he wasn't even having a good AB, and he hasn't had many of those now in months, really in a Phillies jersey, certainly. Way over aggressive, flailing away, but to somehow cover the outside of the part of that plate and to get down enough to get that thing out there in the left field and get a big base hit in that rally was crazy. I mean, it was nuts. An at-bat after Harper gets there, remember, and Hoskins should have already scored, but scores on the Castellanos single. Cut it to 5-3. I mean, that's the catch that he made was brilliant. Was absolutely, that was a sparkling, that's not a brilliant play for Castellanos. Of course it is, but it's a brilliant play for anybody. The JT Realmuto throw in that inning was crazy. And it looked like he very well, clearly it was one of those not enough, information, to overturn, right? Inconclusive, which I hate that thing anyway. To me, I've never understood. Why aren't we just showing people up in that box in New York and Chelsea? And I used to work in that office because it's where MLB.com is. For the people who don't know that, that's where the replay center is. If in the same office, if you're sitting there, I don't care what the hell the call in the field was. I want to know safe or out, but that was tough to call. Segura arguing about it and talking it through with Altuve after that play, but what a hell of a throw by JT Realmuto. And how about what he's doing? People kind of slept on him first couple of years after that whole situation where he came over from the Marlins, and they're thinking, well, maybe not a big-time player. He's a really good catcher. And it is what it is. It's not the heyday of catchers right now. We know that. Go look at the All-Stars, some of them. We understand that. But maybe he just can't hack it. This guy ever stepped up? Are you kidding? I mean, huge in the last series offensively. He's been great with the pitching staff. Don't discount the job that he does in pitch sequencing and handling that staff and handling a bullpen that pitched 5+ innings, a brilliant scoreless baseball last night after being down 5-0. Don't discount what he means in games like last week where he's got, a 4-0 deficit, falters and is gone, not even on the roster this week for this series, and he's working those guys through and that is a forgotten piece of this game. But for him to step up and hit that home run, and of course the roof open, roof closed jokes, very close to the way that it looked with Tucker and Judge just going back a week and a half ago. But what an unbelievable inning and a half for him. And then David Robertson, you want to talk about stories. forget about just the fact, because it's easy in the what has happened recently in the recency bias, and it's true. Think about what's happened with David Robertson and in a celebration. And I was at the game. It happened to Martin Gramatica, for people who remember, kicking a field goal against the Giants and celebrating and having career injuries. As Kendrys Morales went through something like that at the plate during a home run celebration. In this sport, among many others, but what a weird scenario where he's down in the bullpen celebrating a Harper homer and gets hurt. People talk about that, but what about this story from David Robertson, a guy who was pretty much off the field, out of the league, people thought was done, who battled back, pitched the way he did with the Cubs, became a guy who was a premier guy looked at the trade deadline, the Mets, among others, in on him, and able to find his way and, get himself back into the mix, getting closer opportunities. Then he's not the closer. Then he finds himself in that game yesterday and is able to wiggle out of trouble. I mean, the stories across the board are amazing, and we can overrate all the time, one game, especially when it's in a World Series. But there is the 5 days, it was worth the wait after what we saw last night, which was just, fantastic, brilliant baseball. I was getting a lot of crap from people this morning who are Met fans yelling at me because I was talking about how much fun the Phillies are to watch. But I'm sorry, that's just the reality. And we get to talk about that reality and much, much more with my guy, Steve Phillips, kind enough to join me here for a few in October Unfiltered. Stevie, appreciate you, buddy. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you, Case.
Let me start with this, and I know there's probably plenty of them, and we'll break it down. But the level of the kind of amazing game we saw, and now reflecting on that after watching Game 1 last night.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they came out of the gate with the Astros looking like, of course, they're the Astros. This is what they do. They don't have any rust. They don't, they have all these off days. They shake it out. They come out, break out offensively. And I thought, because I've kind of thought that when you look at the rosters, the Astros on paper are much better than the Phillies. And, with that, when I make a prediction, I think, all right, well, that means 4 or 5 game series. It doesn't mean a longer series just because the Astros on paper, they're a better defensive team, better starting pitching, better bullpen, and at least as good an offense. And so, I kind of looked at it, but then the Phillies did what the Phillies do. They came storming back. They're a resilient team. They're gritty. They're tough. And I mean, a bullpen that has failed so many different times over the last several years gives them 5 2/3 scoreless innings of relief. Who would have thunk it? And so, it was a great game. I mean, just really a fun game to watch. And they're two really fun teams to watch too.
How much did, and I'm curious your take on this, because, you look back at the Nola decision pitching Game 1. And I said, as soon as I saw that happen, the thing that to me it opened up was Rob Thompson has been very, very aggressive, to Stevie then be unbelievably aggressive, knowing how good Wheeler's been, extra day, only 86 pitches, and that he could ride him in Game 2. And that if he had a chance, he could really go for it. And we saw that to an even exponential level, the way he handled the managing yesterday. But how much do you think in the middle of that game that helped him psychologically for Rob Thompson, knowing, hey, it's not Wheeler I'm taking out in that spot, and then a questionable, what do I get, Nola? But he knows he got Wheeler now in Game 2. How much did that open things up for him, do you think, with that pen in the middle of the game yesterday?
Oh, I think it did. Look, I have to say, I've been very impressed by the way he's managed.
Me too.
He's managing to win games instead of win the series.
Thank you.
He's he'll be like, oh, I'll figure out tomorrow. But if I can steal a game here, like Game 3s are critical game. We saw him manage Game 3 in the last series like a beast. And so he's done a really nice job. For a guy who's got no real other experience, but he's taken this opportunity and making the most of it. And so, look, it's interesting. The winner of Game 1 since 1995, when the wild card came into play and the playoffs expanded with that round. Since 95 in the World Series, the winner of Game 1 goes on to win 81% of the time. 81%. Now it's odd because in the league championship series, in a 7-game series, the winner of Game 1 goes on to win 71% of the time. But for whatever reason in the World Series, and it's a smaller sample size, it has been more significant. But the last team that lost Game 1 that went on to win the World Series were the 2017 Houston Astros. And so, the Astros have the type of hitters that they can beat a good pitcher. And Wheeler's good enough to make good hitters look bad. And so I think it's going to be another great matchup. And Framber Valdez, he throws bowling balls. Like, he throws bowling balls. You can't Think about trying to hit a bowling ball and see if you can lift it off the ground. You can't. He gets so many ground ball outs, and yet he's one of the most predictable pitchers in baseball. When he is behind in the count, he'll throw his fastball 77% of the time. And his strikeouts, 77% of his strikeouts come on his curveball. So if you're going to get 2 strikes, if you get 2 strikes, you're going to get the curveball from him. And you can know it, but it's still really tough to hit him because it is just electric stuff.
And the contact is not hard contact, to your point, because of that curveball and the effectiveness of the bowling ball, as you say, of belting it into the ground, which will be an interesting matchup because the Phillies like to lift it in the air. By the way, up in the air, certainly plenty over the years with the Astros. You remind me of that game and being there. I remember talking to George Springer after that game. He struck out 4 times and went on to have as good a World Series as anybody's ever seen. So things can turn around, but that offense has had some struggles in places we're not used to seeing, like Jose Altuve. And I thought maybe, Steven, it's only one game. You looked at it and you said, okay, maybe the days off, would help him kind of take a breather for a guy like that who really understands how to hit as well as anybody. He was able to get the lucky knock that he thought it was an out where the fly drops in front of Marsh yesterday. How much is that something with a hitter like that late in the game we don't think about right now because they lost, but maybe gets him in a little bit of a mindset, and a guy who needed seemingly, Stevie, that kind of luck at that spot he got yesterday in the night?
Yeah. I mean, maybe, right? Maybe it will. Now, he had 2 hits in one game during the LCS. They weren't hit hard. They both fell in. I thought, well, maybe that'll be the thing to get him jump started. They need him to get going. I mean, it's so obvious. He's such an important part to their team. It's all in his head. And that is, like, for people to understand this game, that the guys who have been the best at times, I mean, you talk about MVPs at times in their career, can lose it because of what's going on, not because of their swing, but because of what's going on between their ears. This game is so mentally challenging. And especially at the end of the year when you're fatigued, you're worn down, and now you're struggling. And it feels like you can never get out of it. And I played 7 years in the minor leagues feeling that way my entire minor league career. I just felt like I'm never going to get out of this slump. But for even the best, there is a fine line between confidence and fear and panic. And we're seeing it right now with Altuve.
2 spots yesterday I thought kind of unsung for the Phillies because they didn't happen in the ninth, and we'll get to Castellanos' catch and Real Muto's play defensively and then the homer. But 2, maybe kind of comment on both. 1, Ranger Suarez. I can't give this guy enough credit. I mean, what he's done all year, really, for them. But to come in yesterday, Alvarez, 2 for 2. It's a small sample size, but still, both guys know in that spot, 2 for 2 with 2 doubles, right? He's not a lefty guy, Alvarez, anyway. Strikes him out. And then Bryson Stott, who, wow, I'm watching his at-bat, Steve, even this year. Like the games against the Mets early, I'm watching the trend. He had a 10-pitch AB right before Verlander kind of lost it, and he ended the inning, and I think people kind of forgot about it. But the guys on the Phillies outside of the stars are coming through in ways I don't think they're probably getting enough credit for here over the last 3-4
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the bullpen as well. I mean, this is
Amazing.
a bullpen that has been historically bad the last several years, and they've made some changes to it, and guys have really gotten locked in. Bryson Stott reminds me of Chase Utley.
Yeah,
I see him do things, and I'm thinking that it looks like his actions at times look like Utley. Now, he's not quite there yet, but I think there's a whole nother level to his game too that he's going to take it to. He stabilized shortstop for them. Brandon Marsh, has stabilized center field. Not much of a hitter, but he stabilized center field. And I think that on the other side of it, Martin Maldonado had a big base hit yesterday in the game. And so, we focus so much on the stars, but I think what ends up happening is when you prepare for these games, you spend so much time talking about how are we going to pitch Alvarez? How are we going to pitch Harper? How are we going to handle, Hoskins and Real Muto and Schwarber, that you spend less time on the other guys. And in these big moments, sometimes the other guys are the ones who come up and they come through in the clutch.
When you look at yesterday in Verlander, you got to look, he's had an unbelievable year. It's amazing what he's done, Steve. I said, with his pedigree, his career, Hall of Fame track record, the injury, he already got the family, Kate Upton. I mean, who's coming back and even fighting through all that even to do it? Why? But he's done it in such a Cy Young and an amazing way. But is it kind of unfair that we've crushed Kershaw as much as we have in his career? And some of it is very unfair because in that Swiss cheese 6th inning, Don Mattingly had to deal with, right? Nowhere between him and Jansen. And Verlander, this is like every time now. I mean, the ERA was 5.7 going in yesterday. Blowing a 5-0 lead, I said for a guy like that should be like if Jim McMahon had a 4-touchdown lead and 85 Bears defense. Like, there's no way that should ever happen. How do you look at what happened to Verlander yesterday? And how much do you put on Dusty for leaving him in?
Well, here's the thing. It's really hard when you've got a 39-year-old veteran who's never won a World Series game. He's now made 8 starts. He's never won a World Series game. He's 0-6 with a 5.68 ERA coming into the game yesterday, and it's gone up. Yet in his other postseason starts, he's 15-5 with a 3.5 ERA. I mean, he's been great. And so, how do you know, right? How do you know? And so Dusty, in some ways, he got caught up a little bit in managing Verlander instead of managing the game. And it's hard when you've got a big personality and an ace like that, and a guy who, he wants that World Series win. And I think maybe Dusty waited a little longer than he should have. But he did it because of the level of respect he has for Verlander. And, that logic doesn't really play in the analytics game. And yet I understood what he did. And so, and ultimately they lost because they stopped hitting the Astros, right? Their offense shut down. I mean,
and Alvarez specifically, Steve. Right. Alvarez strikes out. Robertson strikes him out. Suarez in a big stop strikes him out. I mean, look, he's been great, but since game 1 of that Mariners series, he hadn't been there. Alvarez.
Yeah, right. And so, this game is just amazing, right? The guy is all world in a series where he had like 7 2-out RBIs in the first round of the play, in their first round, in the wild card round. And the 5-1 game where he hit the double the opposite field, the 3-run homer to win it, all with 2 outs. You think, man, this guy is the best hitter in the world. But man, it can slip through your fingers. That ability to hit and recognize the pitch, and and it can be just one bat at bat. Like for Altuve, he swung at some bad pitches, and I know in his mind he thought, let me wait a little bit longer to see the ball. And when you do that, and with the leg kick like he has, you end up starting too late. Then you realize the ball's getting on you, so you rush your foot down and you rush your swing, and then you reach for the ball, and you're caught behind the fastball in front of the breaking ball. And then you think, oh, I've got to watch the ball a little bit more. And the reality is you got to start sooner. You've got to get that foot down earlier. You can't get your foot down too early, but you can get it down too late. When guys have those leg kicks, they've got to get the foot down. You cannot start your swing until the foot is on the ground. And so if you're behind every fastball, it's because you're not starting early enough and getting the foot on the ground to start your swing, and therefore you're playing catch up with everything. They know that, but it's the trust in your hands and all that goes on in it. And it's, that's why this is such a beautiful game. It's so unpredictable sometimes.
And Steve, he's caught in between. I mean, really, as we say, in terms of Altuve, look, a lot of their guys, they didn't, beat the crap out of the ball in the Yankees series necessarily. I mean, they really didn't. So, you look at that offense, there's still a lot more for them to do. Wheeler is a hard guy to do it against. When you look at this matchup today, if you're sitting there and you're the Astros, what's the approach with Wheeler? And specifically, because I always feel like this is a great conversation that we always have with these starters that can really deal, who are red hot. Cliff Lee, I think of during those postseason runs, 2010, 2011. There was that whole, well, we're going to wait him out and try and run up his pitch count. And then you're 0-2, 0-2, 0-2 and forget it. Then he's throwing breakables. You're going to have a chance. Do you expect the Astros to try and ambush early in counts if they see a fastball and be aggressive with Wheeler, knowing the longer in at bat he gets you with his stuff, the more difficult it's going to be?
Yeah, I do. I do anticipate that they're going to try to jump him early on the count. Look for a pitch. And look, it doesn't always have to be the fastball. It's the tendency. How has he faced you before? What is his percentage of using the slider versus the fastball? What's his general approach with you? And then sometimes you guess early and try to jump on and ambush that pitch to be able to try to do something to drive it. You can guess early and be wrong and still live the fight during the course of the at-bat. But I think that waiting out Wheeler, all he's going to do is get quick outs and or he's just going to throw strikes, and then you're going to be behind at every count with a defensive approach at the plate. And so I think you've got to try to be aggressive on the fastball early in the count, try to get some damage done, get somebody on base, and at least see if you can't get some action going to get out in front. And I think here's the other thing. Like, I look at Philadelphia, the Phillies, I just don't see them winning a lot of 2-1 games. I think that they're going to have to slug. I mean, their bullpen was perfect yesterday.
Oh, amazing.
I can't believe that's going to sustain itself, only because it's not done it all year.
Yeah, that's the last one I had for you, Steven. I appreciate this time. I'm with you on Rob Thompson. I love the way, because to me, almost always having a lack of urgency hurts you for managers in these spots, right? Leave a guy in too long. You're not paying attention. I've been bringing up a lot the last couple of weeks, watching, Dave Roberts, his first time leave Yu Darvish in down 5-0 before finally taking him out. Kershaw, 4 brilliant innings. Well, it's too late by then. Where Rob Thompson going to go when you use Alvarado and Eflin and Dominguez the way he did yesterday? I know he's got the day off, but, if Wheeler can't get you through more than 5 or 6, I don't know where the creativity comes from, because you can't. Syndergaard's got to start, right? Suarez threw yesterday. He got to make a start, even if it's game 4 instead of game 3. What are his options really in this game if Wheeler doesn't give him 6-7 innings?
Yeah, I think it's what he did yesterday. I think that he pushes these guys all 2 days in a row, takes the benefit of the off day. There's potential rain in Philly on Monday that could be an issue. And so I fully expect Rob Thompson to completely go for it in this game today. Again, he's going to go try to do everything he can to win this game. He'll figure out after a day off who's available on Monday. But I think he wants to go up 2-0, and I think you're going to see him manage that way.
Stevie, appreciate you. Thanks so much for the time. Enjoy the rest of the series, buddy. Always
you
a
got
pleasure.
it, Case. You got it. Anytime, buddy.
All right, thank you, man. There's Steve Phillips joining us as we continue here in October Unfiltered. As always, you could jump in the chat 3 ways. We'll get your thoughts along the way as we go on, but we've been getting the thoughts of managers who have been there, done that, and these sorts of things with World Series. Alex Corey yesterday, and our next guest, although I hate to have to remind him, I always have to give this intro. If not for this Madison Bumgarner guy, would have been a 2-time World Series champion as a manager, my buddy Ned Yost. Ned, how are you, sir?
Great, Case. How are you? Can you hear me fine?
I hear you perfectly, buddy. Thank you so much for doing this. I let me start kind of where I just was with Steve. Rob Thompson has been a lifer in this game such a long time. He's such a well-respected guy. You managed against those Yankee teams many times where he was, anybody talks about, as the bench coach, where he's basically doing everything he can, like your bench coaches did, to try and help support his manager. He deserved this chance. But how about watching a guy get the opportunity he's gotten and be as aggressive as he's been? Because he's been balls to the wall, Ned, the way he's managing this team here in the playoffs.
Yes. And, Case, there's, Dusty, he has been there so many times. There's so many people that are kind of behind, and where if you give them the opportunity, they can excel. Really, I'm excited to see what happens the rest of this series and how he goes into this game tonight and how he goes further. Now, let me, right before I came on, and I when we were in the playoffs, I'm thinking about bullpen usage. Are my guys going to make it? Am I pushing? Where I called Bobby Cox, and I said, Bobby, I'm my bullpen guys. I'm afraid I'm going to wear them out. I'm afraid I'm going to. He said, Ned, trust your relievers. If they take 2 days in a row, if it's 3 days in a row, but that communication yesterday, that's a communication that starts general trust there, where the pitchers know that they're going to give you everything with you, and you're going to be able to put your arm around them and thank them for that worn out. This says I can't go. Says I can go today. I can't. Communication is extremely important. Be able to have trust in them. This time of year is unlike any other time of year. Plugged into the light socket. You wake up like you're 6 years old in your room for mom and dad to come get you so you can see what's under the tree. Tremendous feeling this time of year, and you are completely energized. You can do much more than regular season because the stakes are so high, the adrenaline is so high, and the stadium is so high, Case. And it's funny, as a manager, I went 8 times, and the first and enjoy it, but you can't. You're just so lit crowd. But you feel the crowd. You feel the energy inside you. Is a tremendous feeling. So, be aggressive. For me, it's a little more dangerous when you're in a day or two, because they're not used to that grind. When they get the call, they're going to be ready. So it's going to be.
I want to. We're chatting with Ned Yost, so I want to try. Part of managing certainly is calling audibles on the fight. So I want to do this with you. This is by the way, first time ever we're going to try this. While we're sitting here live, welcome to podcasting. So I want to try because you're coming in, but you're bopping a little bit in and out. Do me a favor, take the AirPods out because they're for some reason try and do it just through the computer and try and switch your audio in the meantime. And I'm going to bring you back up here in a second. So just give me a thumbs up while you got your audio, and I could see you. But that way, when I hear you, we'll see if that might be able to fix things. This is how you manage and you slow the game down as it's happening. This is at least what I've heard from all these managers I've worked with and hosted with for I don't even know how long. Ned, how are we now?
I think we're fine. You hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. It's a little bit choppy. I just I'll battle through it. I just making sure you're on the farm, so I know like your wireless is not because you're in relaxed style. So which is not the end of the world. I want to ask you this: when you've got a Zach Wheeler type and you're Rob Thompson and he's in game 2. When you sat there and you had your horses in series that you were in all those years coaching with the Braves, managing when you're sitting there and you had the Greinke's and then you're sitting there with the Royals, obviously, when you know that the guy going the next day is a horse that you can ride, even if he gives up a couple early, you just know that dude's hanging in. I'm 6th, 7th inning, I got a chance. How much more aggressive, Ned, did that make you the game prior in a postseason in terms of being able to kind of let everybody out of the stable because you can hand it to the ball and say, hey, look, you got to ride me a little bit tomorrow with that kind of a starter?
Well, I mean, that all you don't think about in the playoffs. You go pitch to pitch because, I mean, let's Verlander, you know. So he's in that game last night. And you're looking at pitch count, and you're thinking, okay, hopefully I can take this. Just never know what's going to happen this time of year. It's just so you got to kind of adjust to the situation as soon as you get there. And we would start like 3 weeks, sit and try to anticipate everything that could happen, how we were going to react to it, what we were going to try to do. By the time we got there, these things that came up between myself and my coaching staff, so we pretty much knew exact scenario when it happened, and it just made it easier. But don't know what's going to happen, and you got to just kind of take it pitch by pitch, go from there.
When you look at the Astros, and here's a team that's got a 5-0 lead yesterday, and Justin Verlander on the mound, That's uphill climb city. I think about, we've referenced this over the years, you and I, many times, down 7-3 in the seventh, I think it was, with John Lester on the hill, right? And the fight that your team had, do the Phillies kind of look, they play totally differently than your teams did in terms of a lot of slug, right? Not nearly as much contact. It's a different game now. But one of the things that reminds me, and I mean this, of the attitude of your guys, and yet a lot of younger players, and they have some younger players too, but they're led by more veterans certainly than you had at the time, because you had a young core. But there was that fight of belief versus what everybody else believed, where your club just had this resounding thought that we're going to win no matter what. How much are you enjoying just watching the way the Phillies are playing, considering 5-0 in Verlander to most other people? They're going home in their own heads mentally, Ned. This team, you could tell legitimately wasn't even surprised they were back in the game when they tied it.
You got a couple of factors there. The one is you're playing in Houston. One little medium fly ball
Gone
all the way
right
from getting behind the whole time. And you're going to have that in Philly too, because it's a short porch. Are constantly trying to figure out ways to get guys on. With those parks, all of a sudden you can tally 2 or 3 runs. The mindset of the Phillies in that situation, it doesn't matter what, even that, hey, they can hit a fly ball that's not going to go out in most parks and put runs. Manager in Houston, I was never comfortable with even a 6th or 7th inning, because you just don't know what would happen. And we made a huge in Houston. I think in Game 4 in 14 or Game 5, where we ended up, going to the I think, which is so important, and it's hard for people to understand, play together like they do. Over the course of the years, they're coming up, they're trying to fit in, they're trying to understand, because they think that they're good, they think that they can win. It's a wild card game in 14, where our guys are to knowing in their heart that they could win. And that's, now you can definitely tell that the Phillies, they scrap, once that playoff started, and it might have been Game 1 against St. Louis, that they could win, to knowing that they could win. And they've run off. When you got a group of guys that know in their heart that they could win, they're going through it for the first time, they're going to be a major handful in that great club like the Houston Astros.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference when you've got that collective belief. And to your point, the Phillies, last team to get into the postseason, they don't care. Weren't supposed to beat the Braves, who beat them up all year long in the last series. They don't seem to care about that. The last thing for you is when you sit there and you look at the Astros now, down 1-0 at home. We talk about, these must-win games. The Astros can go win. Look, they didn't lose a game before we got into last night's game, right, in the whole postseason. So we know that they can win in bunches. And they were the better team, clearly, in the regular season. They've got the better roster. They've got the pedigree, 6 continued LCSs. How much are managers and players feeling the pressure of being down 0-1 in a series, even though you need 4? Just going into this game, you get down early, all of a sudden we're down 1-0 and we're down early in Game 2. How much is that tangibly something that you feel being on that side?
That game starts, you're feeling it. And you're constantly trying to put, I think, man, if we go down 2-0 today, we got to go to Philly. No, you got to stay, continue to continue mentally to stay. You freeze your mind up. They've got tremendous pitching. Houston does. Case, I'll give you a story. When we were playing the St. Louis Cardinals in the playoffs, and they beat us in St. Louis. They beat us in Game 4 to go up 3-1. Down the hall, you could hear the Cardinals. They got their music blaring. They're 3-1. We're 1 game away from elimination. And all of a sudden, we're sitting there, and the guy started looking around the room, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, there's 10 or 15 guys chuckling, and Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz the next 3 days. They don't have a chance. Game 7, big, but the pressure that they felt, they were to us like, oh man, we don't want to get to 3-3. Boom, they lose 3-3 runs in the first inning. But the pressure is there. But you got to continue those thoughts out, and you just got to go do what you've done all year long. Just don't worry about what you can't control. Play your hearts out, and
Ned, appreciate you so much for doing this. I do. Enjoy the rest of the series and watch it at home and time with the family this weekend. And thanks so much for the spot this afternoon, my friend. Appreciate you. You know that.
Thanks, Case.
Thank you. There he is, one of the best people in the game and a good friend over the years, and we appreciate Ned Yost for hopping on board. Guy knows a thing or two, again, without that mad bum guy. Greatest performance I've ever seen in a postseason game by a pitcher in person. Would have been a 2-time World Series champ. And look, for Rob Thompson and for Dusty Baker, they've got different roads in what got them here. But Rob Thompson, a lifer in the game. He's been around it. He's been around winning for a long period of time, certainly was with the Yankees. And, he knows a thing or two about how it gets managed. He's seen it. Now, though, to be doing it as aggressively as he has, you got to give him a ton of credit. We love Ned, appreciate him. Of course, and for those who don't know, Ned joining me from, he is farm through and through. I don't even know how many godforsaken acres he's got, even though he lives only about an hour from me here in Georgia. But we'll have to we'll send him some better Wi-Fi for the next time. But we appreciate him, and thanks for bearing through some of the audio with that. And our thanks for Steve Phillips as well for joining us here on this show. Tomorrow, Mike Stanton coming up. We got Billy King coming up on Monday. Also, Gary Sheffield next week. We've got a lot of different guests that are coming. We'll get you posted on all of that. Of course, at Casey Stern on Twitter, where you could join the Unfiltered Revolution and become a part of October Unfiltered anytime during the show by chatting with us 3 ways. For example, as Charles does here, where he lets us know that he feels that we had a choke job from Justin Verlander. Look, choking to me, when you got a 5-0 lead and you're in the 3rd inning, I think he choked the lead away and blew that for sure. Look, the numbers are what they are. Verlander's been terrible in the World Series, but as Steve Phillips pointed out early in the show, he's been not great, but pretty decent the rest of the postseason when he's pitched. We never give credit, though. This is what I always say. It's like Steven Strasburg disappeared off the face of the earth, not healthy in years seemingly now. But go look at the numbers this guy was putting up in 2019. It is not easy to dominate in a postseason and in a World Series. We sometimes don't realize how much credit you should give the guys who do it. Because look what happened to Scherzer earlier this year in the postseason. We could say, okay, well, he was healthy with the oblique, and Verlander, well, he's still coming off an injury, and look how many innings he's pitched. We can give excuses for everything, but I go back to your Jim McMahon with a 5-touchdown lead in the 85 Bears defense. If I'm telling you you're Dusty Baker with a 5-0 lead and Verlander on the hill, and that bullpen, you can't blow that as a team. That team blew that lead. That team choked the game away. And I love Dusty, but you can't be given there in that spot, giving up that lead without handing that ball to Abreu and company with a lead. You got to put that in your favor. And now all the pressure is sitting there on Houston because you got Zach Wheeler sitting there in game 2. And look, I love Framber Valdez. He's arguably the most underrated player this year in the American League. Led it in innings. He's going to get some top 5 Cy Young votes, even though he'll be among others to lose to Verlander, who's going to win it. That he'd been brilliant at all the quality starts, broke the record. He keeping you in games. Even the game against the Yankees, so impressive a week or so ago, whenever it was, where with the bad PFP and the 2 errors on one play, gives up 3 runs, but keeps you in the game, gives you a chance to win. That's easy for us to say, not easy to do. He'd been brilliant. But Zach Wheeler, that guy's a dude right now. And you're Rob Thompson. I'm with Steve Phillips. He don't care about anything right now. He going for it. I love the way he's managing. I love, I mean, again, it's like the team plays. It's like I put it in Twitter. I mean, look, I hope this doesn't make us PG-13. All balls. That's the way Philly's playing. They don't care. They don't give a crap what the hell they're supposed to do or not do. Alec Bohm making a beautiful defensive play yesterday in a big spot. Castellanos with a beautiful defensive diving catch in a 9th inning of a game yesterday. Not a good outfielder. Been terrible most of the last few months. Unlike Juan Soto, didn't get a Gold Glove candidacy, and that's another thing. But the stories in the bullpen, Ranger Suarez, again, Yordan Alvarez, we're talking a lot about Altuve, and I get it, because clearly, right now, the hidden story, and it's amazing how things change in the postseason, right? Like the Astros hadn't lost a freaking game the whole time until yesterday, and we're talking about all the great things that they have, and they still very well could win this series, and they could win it in 5 games. Steve Phillips referenced earlier in the show, 2017. I remember talking to George Springer before the next game about striking out 4 times in that game and losing. And I don't think he got out the rest of the series. It was the World Series MVP. It was brilliant, and the team won. I know nobody wants to hear about it with the trash cans and all that. I get it. But I'm just saying, you get 1 game. It's only 1 game. But it's amazing how things change, because when you go back and you look at the history of it, the Astros haven't beaten the crap out of the ball. The Yankees were kind of in those games. They just couldn't hit at all. They got timely hits, the timely home run from McCormick after the error and the ball that dropped between Bader and Judge. They got the timely home run from Bregman on a pitch that Severino didn't get in enough. They had some big hits, but they didn't beat the crap out of the ball. Yesterday, Tucker, terrific, not once but twice, but Alvarez got struck out in a big spot by Suarez, who was 2 for 2 and 2 doubles off of in his career, who came out of the pen. He's not a bullpen arm anymore, used to be, as a starter for them. And then you get later in the game, Robertson struck him out. I mean, since that first series with Seattle, Yordan Alvarez hasn't been the same either. They got to get those 2 guys going. Forget about just against Wheeler. And I know in Philadelphia, that part going to play to both of their offenses. Don't forget, that's not just Philly who's going to take advantage of that. The Astros got a lot of power up and down their lineup and slug of their own. But if they don't figure out how to get Altuve and Alvarez going, they're not going to beat this team 4 times, because the Phillies don't care what the bullpen names look like on their baseball card. They only care about what's happened in the last 2-3 weeks. It's the crazy part about baseball. That's the insanity about the way this sport works. It's why you can have a Cardinal team in 2006 win 83 games in a regular season in a terrible division in the NL Central, where everybody else under 500, they're underdogs every series. And regardless of Andy Chavez and the strength to be here, it's the Cardinals who were there with Anthony Reyes in a World Series of all people starting game 1 and David Eckstein winning a World Series MVP. It is about, what teams do during that stretch. An unbeatable Yankee team that Brasso, who sent Chapman and company home with the Rays, and they end up, who knows if Snell's still in the game, and Turner would have been gone for game 7. Who knows what would have happened if there was a game 7? Don't know. I mean, this is the crazy part about October. This is why you love baseball, that you never know what the hell you're going to get. And yes, the layoffs hurt some of these teams before, and I believe that they did, but it doesn't mean that regardless of the format that you're going to sit there and this is not the NBA. The NBA this season, I'm sorry. Right now, I think we all understand, right? It's either going to be the Bucks, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Suns. You want to give me like one of the Nets? I mean, if somehow they come together, will give me one other team? There's like 5 teams that possibly can win the championship, and the year is 5 games into the season. You already know that in the NBA, we're 5 games into the year, that there's only 5-6 teams that could win. It's like that every single year in the NBA. And I love basketball, and I love the NBA covering it, right? But it's just the way it is. The NFL, it's like, okay, the Giants and the Jets are like, what are they playing, this Super Bowl? I mean, who knows? You can't figure it out this year, but normally you can kind of peg what's going to happen. Which 4 or 5 teams got a shot? Baseball, not that way. You got a team that sneaks in the back door, barely got in. People thought the Brewers would beat them out. They find their way in a series against the Cardinals, nobody picked them. A series against the Braves, nobody picked them. And a series that they sit here, and even though my gut said, and I said it on this show on Monday, my gut said Phillies in 6, I still didn't have the balls to pick them and took the Astros in 6. That's what they're using. That's that fuel that they have. But that's why they don't care. The crazy part is they didn't like luck themselves. That's why Verlander choked. It's I hate that the choke thing sometimes, because it's like, with the Mets this year with the division, they choked opportunities certainly against the Cubs and teams like that. But the Braves took that division over 4 months from them. The Phillies they took game 1 back. Now, Dusty should have had Verlander out, should have gone to the bullpen earlier. Yes. Their big bats didn't come through. You had an accidental, pop fly single in front of Marsh from Altuve. You got nothing out of Alvarez. You're waiting for Tucker to come up as the big bat. That's not the way it's supposed to be. He hit in 5th in the lineup. They didn't get the big at-bats. Pena was in a big spot, didn't get it done this time, and the Phillies got the outs. They got the outs in that bullpen. Ranger Suarez got the outs. Alvarado got the outs. Eflin got the outs. Dominguez got the outs, and David Robertson got the outs. Who the hell would have ever thought that? The Phillies bullpen was a disaster over like a 4-year period. They were a mockery. They can't play defense. They can't pitch in the bullpen. Now, all of a sudden, they're brilliant in the bullpen. They're playing brilliant defense. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Seinfeld will have a chicken salad instead of a tuna in the Even Steven episode. We are living in crazy town. But now Zach Wheeler on the hill, not crazy town. Zach Wheeler's a dude. Framber Valdez is great. Right now in a matchup with Wheeler, on paper, you're taking Wheeler. He's been unhittable. If he pitches that way in game 2, who knows? Then you're going back to Philadelphia, where it's like, I don't know, but can they hit Javier McCullers? Sure they can. You got to put yourself in a position to have a chance to win a series, and after game 1, after a wild, crazy game it was, the Phillies are in position now to do some damage. This is a spot where Wheeler gets a lead 2-0, and you're sitting there, and you got Wheeler on the hill, and he threw 3 scoreless. You're in the 4th inning. You're an Astro fan saying, are we going home again? You're a Dusty Baker fan saying, is this going to happen to him again? That's how quick, after not losing the whole postseason, it changes like this. Go back to, I posted on Twitter a video. I think it's the day before the postseason started. It was like a minute and a half. And the whole thing was about, what I have learned most about covering the postseason is we don't remember until it happens every year just how fast these things happen. The Dodgers are in a record season and everything's amazing. In 3-4 days, you're gone. That's it. It's over. That fast. 5-0 lead with Verlander and an Astro team that hadn't lost a game in the whole stinking postseason. Now we're sitting here less than 24 hours later. And let me tell you something. 24 hours later, Wheeler's sitting there up 3-0 in the 6th inning. Every Astro fan in the world thinking we're going home in 5 games. Phillies all of a sudden turn the tide quick, become the favorites in your DraftKings odds or wherever, right? Bet online, of course. That's just the way it is. Things to watch tonight. Early in this game, Altuve, can he get going? Can he use, Steve brought up the point, he's right. Had a 2-hit game in the Yankee series. Thought maybe that's where he bounces back. He doesn't. A lot of times with hitters, talking to them over the years, people, because it's all about psyche. It's why, why do Wade Boggs eat chicken, every day or whatever the routine was. These guys are creatures of unbelievable habit, baseball players, right? They're crazy in all that. But here's Altuve, who thought he was out, was pissed off at himself because he popped up. Marsh playing too deep, drops in front of him, gets a base hit. And it doesn't end up the way he wants, but does that now lead to now in the first step out of this game where he's feeling a little bit better? Was it a sigh of relief of some sort? I don't know. They lost the game. Certainly it's not going to feel that way, but they need something, anything to get him going. They need Joe Boo in a locker. It doesn't matter what you got. Something to get you going. Alvarez, what kind of at-bats do we see? Continue to follow the matchups. I said this before the series all week long, that you're going to see David Robertson in a lot of spots against Alvarez. And even though yesterday he ended up being in that spot because he was in the 9th inning, he struck him out. You know what happens when you do that in a small sample size series like this? All of a sudden, Rob Thompson saying, okay, well, if I use Alvarado in today's game in the 6th, 7th inning, right? And in the 8th inning, Here comes the spot with Alvarez, and I only want to use Dominguez for one. Robertson may be the guy who faces him. Because with that matchup and that cutter and that curveball, and you saw it yesterday play out in that at-bat, we broke it down with Anthony Recker yesterday. I've been talking about that all week, that's a matchup that you could see. But the Astros got to get those bats going. Valdez going to keep you in the game. I mean, even though the defense on his own part and his own mistakes put him in a 3-0 hole in the last time we saw him in that series against the Yankees, and he kept him in it. I mean, even if he goes up too early, because the Phillies going to find their way to homer in this game. They seem to do it every day, at least once. He's going to stay and keep you in there. Wheeler going to keep you in there. This isn't going to be, and now who knows, maybe it ends up this way, because, certainly you would predominantly think that tonight's going to be a night where he's 6th, 7th inning. Both those starters could very well be in the game. Valdez just throws. I mean, he throws innings. But Dusty cannot. I don't care if Valdez has thrown 5,000 innings this year. I don't care that he's got enough quality starts to keep himself busy. It's longer than a CVS receipt. I don't care. You're Dusty Baker tonight. Valdez looks shaky in the 4th. I'll bring you in the game or wherever you're going. You can't be down 0-2. You got to be urgent. You cannot sit there. And I agree with what Steve Phillips said, just to close here. I agree with what he said. And I said this at the outset of the show. If you missed it, then go back, Apple, Spotify, podcast, everywhere you get them. And you can listen to all of our episodes. But of course, go back to what I was saying with this. But Dusty got caught with a Hall of Fame pitcher, with a Hall of Fame pedigree, and a Cy Young Hall of Fame kind of season, and all the things he wanted to do to win that game. He wanted to get a World Series win he hasn't gotten. Dusty knows that. Dusty's a player. Dusty feels for his players. He feels he's like a father in there. He felt all that, and he managed Justin Verlander yesterday instead of managing the team in that spot. He managed the Hall of Famer instead of managing the team. Because 5-3 I had no problem with. The start at bat, they don't get closer, you come back. When you can get to 5-5 and have to face Bryce Harper and be in all of that, that can't happen. You got to at some point say, okay, well, it doesn't make sense. And I get it. He had 3 great innings. Like, how the hell did that happen? Well, the same way that sometimes pitchers have rough starts and they snap in, it could snap out of whack. It doesn't matter how. Is it innings on the year? Is he tired? Is it just they were getting to him? I don't think he choked necessarily. I know people are going to go there. ERA north of 6 now in a World Series. But whatever the hell the reasoning is, you got to get him out of the game. You can't sit there and watch it happen. And he got caught watching a Hall of Famer and managing a Hall of Famer and that pedigree instead of that team yesterday. Doesn't mean they would have won the game anyway. Who knows? But I'd rather hand Abreu a lead 5-4 than tied. And that's the mistake that he made. Don't make a mistake here. Be with us tomorrow, 12 o'clock Eastern time. Mike Stanton will join me. We'll break down a number of things on this show, including everything that happens in Game 2, looking ahead on the flights. Were they happy? Were they not? For which side and what happened? Getting into Game 3. And we got a lot coming as we'll continue every day, noon Eastern, live with you on the YouTube channel for me, which you can subscribe, in the Twitter at Casey Stern, the YouTube for Believe, BLEAV, and, of course, anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else. Thank you for being on board. Thank you to Steve Phillips. Thank you to Ned Yost. And thank you to the folks who helped make this possible. Because, of course, we are presented by Bet Online.